Hello again and welcome. This is Michael Pizzolla. I'd like to welcome you to this 2016 Preakness Value Capping Video Rant. And first off, I want to thank all of you for your extremely kind comments about the Kentucky Derby rant. It was a pretty good day. For those of you who don't know me, by the way, my name is Michael Pizzolla. I'm author of the best-selling book, Handicapping Magic, co-author of the classic Pace Makes the Race. I'm the publisher of the Post-Time Daily, which I think is the finest past performances that you can get. It's an online past performance at www.posttimedaily.com, and publisher of Black Magic handicapping software and the upcoming Value Capper software, which is Black Magic 2.0. Enough of that. I want to get right into talking with you about the Preakness. Now, as I'm speaking to you, it's Thursday afternoon, which means it is 48 hours before the Preakness. Just to make things a little more difficult, we have weather coming. It's going to be raining in Baltimore. We may have thunder showers, which may scare the horses. They actually changed the morning line in the middle of things. Oh, gosh. And all kinds of things. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed, the horse that, was the strongest horse in the Derby who won, Nyquist, is a 3-5 favorite. Wonder who the program's going to like. Let me think about this a little bit. This is a tough one. Of course it's going to like Nyquist. So, and any program that doesn't, you need to get another software program, okay? So for those, but I think there might be some possibilities in the Preakness for a price horse. Now, I'm going to ask you to come look over my shoulder. I'm going to take you through a recap of the two races that we hit on Derby Day. If you remember, I gave 3 undercard races on Derby Day. One of them was scratched. One of them paid $38.60. One of them paid 15 and change. It was a great day. I got to tell you a funny story. So I got a message from someone who says, hey, you know what? I don't handicap. I don't know anything about horse racing. I had Nyquist. Anyone could have had Nyquist. Who cares? And I thought, well, okay, thanks for your feedback. I know that wasn't quite the point. See, the point of these videos is not to show off how I can pick horses and not, because it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to communicate to you is an entirely new way of looking at the races, okay, which is what I call value capping. Betting horses you like that the public shouldn't, waiting for your price, letting the bet make you. Okay. That's what I'm trying to demonstrate. I'm trying to show you a little of the nitty-gritty. That's why I'm going to show you this warts and all. I'm going to show you the races from the Derby, sure, and then from Derby Day rather, and then I'm going to show you how I go about looking at the races. And you'll see a lot of races that I pass and a lot of races that look very confusing. If you think this is all about just boom, this horse, and like that. So anyway, he writes back. He says. And by the way, nice try, because obviously this was done after the Derby. So, okay, at this point it was like, well, no, it was done before the Derby. He said, I just watched it. I said, well, I posted it 2 days before the Derby. He said, well, I don't believe you bet these things. And it was like, and usually at this point, it's like, all right. I don't know why, because I'm getting too old for this stuff. I don't know why. I sent him copies of the tickets. All right, so he writes me back. He says, it's clear what you're doing. You're betting every horse in the race, and then you're taking pictures of them, and then you're exchanging them so you get your money back. So whoever wins, you can show a winning ticket. Oh, God. So then I asked the cashier to make receipts, and so you could see the cashes. Anyway, I'll show you some tickets, not to brag. But only because it was a good day, and it illustrates that the biggest advantage that you have as a value capper, or even as a handicapper, is that you can pass races. There's nothing that says because it's the Derby, because it's the Preakness, because it's the Belmont, because it's the Breeders' Cup, that you must bet. No, you can pass. See, in poker, you have to ante. You can't? Well, I don't know. I don't play poker, so maybe you don't have to ante sometimes. I don't know. Maybe when you get passed on that. But if you play a video poker machine, you put your money in before you see what the hand is. We get to see the hand first. What a huge advantage. So if there's no value, look, Nyquist is going to be right up there. Okay. Now Mohaymen is skipping the rest of the Triple Crown. It's pointing, I believe, for the Travers. There's an interesting horse, colt. Please forgive me if I say colt instead of horse. I mean horse instead of colt. Interesting horse called Fellowship, who ran third to Nyquist in the Florida Derby. And I'll show you what's interesting about it. I don't know if Nyquist and Exaggerator are going to be pulling an affirmed Alidar deal where they run 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. It could be. By the way, if it comes Nyquist Exaggerator like it did in the Derby, it's going to pay nothing. So we'll look for some potential value without getting foolish. Once again, we have the problem of, is the race going to go early or late? Usually it's a lot clearer. If the track is fast, this race is going to go late. If it gets sloppy, it's a difficult story. I'll show you both ways of looking at it. So this may be redemption for Exaggerator and the DeSormos. Interesting, Fellowship missed by a hair getting into the Derby. He was the 21st on the list. There are a lot of subplots, but of course everyone wants Nyquist, the 3-5 morning favorite, to win, so we have a potential of another Triple Crown. Enough said. Come on, look over my shoulder. I'm going to show you really quickly a recap of Derby Day. I'm going to show you some of those tickets, especially for you-know-who if you're watching this and wrote to me, and I'll show you some of the tickets that I cashed. And then I'll take you over my shoulder while we look at how I use Black Magic, nitty-gritty. This is how I'm doing it a couple of days before the races. Again, before scratches, before changes, before weather, and all of that. So if you're ready, come along, and we'll look at the Preakness. Okay, so I want to begin the technical part of this video with a quick recap of Derby Day. If you remember on Derby, and again, we're going to have the same issue with the Preakness. The question is, would the race go early? Would it go late? Would it go highly pressured? On the early side, Nyquist was very strong. Mohaymen, even without that big number, was strong. Exaggerator, strong. And I felt like with the 3 morning line favorites there wouldn't be much value. On the late side, I thought if everything collapsed, we still have Nyquist up there. Destin, I didn't care for. Mohaymen was still there, sudden breaking news. Now, my personal betting in this was a small bet on Mohaymen and sudden breaking news because they were, quite frankly, long prices. And it was more of a recreational than a good, solid bet. Nyquist looked much the best. And here's, by the way, a news flash and a spoiler. For those of you who may not want to go through this whole thing, Nyquist looks very strong in the Preakness. Ho, big surprise. Really, Michael? A 3-5 favorite looks really strong? Well, yes, it does. As I will urge you to do on Preakness Day, don't forget to look at the undercards. And just to recap, I reviewed 3 races that I thought might be accessible on the undercards. In the first race, the horse was scratched. In the second race, I pointed to the 9 and the 7. They were right there. They were prices. They both looked like they could close, especially the 9. The 9 actually came from way off the pace and paid $38.60. The 7 completed the trifecta, and I'll tell you why in a second. Now, those who are in the coaching program Wizards Forum see my monthly videos. I always show my tickets and like that. Not so much on these public YouTube videos, just because. I did get a comment saying, well, it's easy to say these are good horses. And first, this fellow thought I made the video after the Derby, and he said, well, I just saw it today. I said, yeah, but it was posted like a couple of days before the Derby. Okay. So then he said, well, you don't really bet these things. And he was really a nice enough guy, don't get me wrong. And so I sent him a couple of, pictures of tickets. I said, well, look, I bet $30 on this horse the day before, and I bet $20 on it the day of the Derby. I mean, I knew this horse would be a big enough price. By the way, I did have some money on the 7 horse. So I don't want to think that, I picked magically between these. No, sometimes I'll bet 2 horses in a race when the odds, or I think the odds, were going to justify that. Now, on Derby Day, I had to plan that I might not be able to be there at the race book. And so I bet the day in advance. As it turned out, I was able to go back. So this was nice. The fellow then said, well, yeah, but you probably bet them and then turned them in as scratches. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. In any event, I took this trifecta. Now, again, I took the 7-9 with everything in the middle with 7-9 at the end. What I'm not showing you, and I could, but it's a lot of work to make these slides. So what I'm not showing you is there were 2 other tickets. 7-9 with 7-9 with all, 7-9, and then all with 7-9 with 7-9. So it wasn't a $7 bet. It was a $21 bet, okay? It still turned out very nicely. For my $42, I got, over $1,140. So, but the other point I want to make is Derby Day just happened to be an exceptional day because of these 2 races. Not all days will be like this. Some days I will tear up virtually every ticket, have a couple of savers, and and that happens when you're betting longer priced horses. Okay, so please don't say, oh gosh, Pizzolla did so well on the undercard Derby Day. Whatever he says on the undercard of Preakness, no, I don't know. I don't know when the winners are going to cluster, when they don't. And plus, there were 2 very clear races. There were 2 others that I did not talk about on the Rant video, so I'm not going to get into them here. I'll show those on the Wizards Forum. A couple of those were discussed before the race on the Wizards Forum, but it's very technical, and I don't want to get into that here. So there were my 2 trifecta tickets, 2 of them, let's say. And then the other race that I mentioned on the undercard was Churchill Downs Race 11, with Divisadero being right on top, 5-1 going to 15-1 contention, 15-1. I was looking for a good 7-8-1 on the horse. As it turned out, it went off at 7-1, almost 7-1, 15-40. The exacta came back 157.80. I took a little dollar exacta box with everything, and I picked a couple of horses that had some exotic patterns in the Black Magic / ValueCapper software. So, and again, I bet this the day before. I didn't know if I was going to be able to be at the race book on Derby Day. Little $30 bet there, a little $3 exacta box. And just to, I don't know why I'm doing this, but the one fellow just kind of said, well, you probably just bet every horse in the race and then turned all the tickets in. I mean, please, I'm getting too old for this. I've been doing this for many, many years. You can ask the people who I show tickets to all the time. Not to brag. I'm not doing this to brag. But I am showing you that if you have a day like this, it's a good day. So that $30 win bet at Churchill, I cashed it. See that? Cash, $579. The little $20 bet, cash. See cash. That was $386. That trifecta, each of those 50-cent trifectas were worth $571. This is all from the second race at Churchill. There's another 50-center. Notice the ticket numbers are different. I'm not just reproducing these, okay? So the 11th race, that little $30 bet was $231. And finally, that exacta, that little $3 box was $236.70. I took a couple of other shots at some other race cards. I caught a horse, and I missed a few other horses. So these aren't the only bets that I made. Okay, I lost some bets as well, including my Derby bet. But this is, this is the way it goes when you are betting price horses. All right, so let me give you a quick overview of the Preakness, and then we'll go right to the program, and you can look over my shoulder, and we'll go through some of the undercard races as well. You should not be surprised to see Nyquist sitting right on top of the odds line. Any program worth its salt should have this horse on top. I mean, it's won its first 8 races. It ran a very impressive race against the other horses in the Derby. Was it impressive when you compare it to Secretariat? No. And we see Nyquist and Exaggerator doing the old affirmed Alidar routine, where it doesn't look like Exaggerator likes to go past Nyquist. I don't know if they like anything or they don't like anything. But look, Nyquist is 3 to 5 morning line. Now, here's the question in the race. As I'm making this, it is Thursday morning. The race is not until Saturday, the 21st. Yeah. So I looked at the weather forecast for Baltimore, the Baltimore area, and for Pimlico, and it looks like it's going to rain. What happens if it's going to rain? Right now, the race comes up as highly pressured, and I'll show you why when we get into the program. Well, looking at the track profile, and you have to go back, right, because the Pimlico doesn't run a mile and 3/16 very often. So I had to go back and look historically at the other Preaknesses. So I've got Oxbow's Preakness, the 2012 I'll Have Another's, and Shackelford's. And if you notice that energy expenditure is very late. And let me blow this up for you a little bit. You see 50.52, 50.59, 50.09, 50.7. That's very late. So you say, hoo-ha, it's late. On the other hand, the beaten lengths, the horse is kind of close up. I don't know if that sounds familiar, but that's just like how Nyquist looked in the Derby. Close up, but had good late energy. Now, what happens if it rains? So I went back to my track profiles. I asked it to show me the sloppy, and the 2015 Preakness came up. There's American Pharaoh. That energy is 53%. That's extremely early. And if you remember, American Pharaoh wired the field. So now I'm going to look at this race very differently if it's going to be on a sloppy track or it's going to be on a fast track. Fast track, I'll believe the late bias. Sloppy track, not so much. So just to blow that up a little bit, you see the energy high, the beaten lengths. American Pharaoh wired the field. Very impressive. And the sloppy track Preakness last year. And it did so. It just kind of pulled away, won by 7 lengths. What's interesting to me, and of course, Black Magic put it on top. I mean, it was 4 to 5 morning line and so forth. Taylor Verve, who is not going to come up so well on a unpressured scenario, this is a dead closer, was able to close for second. Again, on the sloppy track. So these late closers might be able to get into the exotics. So let's get out of ancient history and come on and look over my shoulder while we look at what the software did with the Preakness and for this year's Preakness, and how we can use the insights that we've gotten from looking at these historical races to this year's Preakness. All right, so let's look at what the Black Magic 1.0 does with the Preakness. When you open it up right out of the box, it is obvious that Nyquist is right on top, right? And it's got a little bit of a gap. It's 9-2, 6-1. So you say 9-2, what are you, nuts? You're never going to get 9-2. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's 3 to 5 morning line, probably go off, odds on. Everyone wants to see another Triple Crown winner, and so forth and so on. But what's interesting to me is that the race comes up as pressured, highly pressured. And if we look at the AccuPressure screen, we see that horses like Awesome Speed, Nyquist should be, sitting in there somewhere, maybe the 9 Abiding Star, maybe Lauban. And then Nyquist makes a little move, which is exactly what he did, and that's what he does in most of his races, on the lead or just a little off the lead and comes on. It's many champions have that style. We call it early pressing. The The thing to notice, though, is how many of these colts are early horses. Look at the first call. Look at the second call. So in that kind of race, the software favors the closers. Now, the closers, from a positional plus velocity point of view, are Exaggerator. No kidding. It's been closing on Nyquist for a while. Fellowship, which we're going to get to. It's an interesting colt here, and Cherry Wine. You can do this if you don't have software at home, by the way, and you want to look at the kind of pace scenario in the race. You can do this by eye. I mean, Nyquist looks like it could, it's closed once in the juvenile, came from 6th. It's closed from 3rd. This is a very flexible kind of horse, colt. Okay, forgive me if I call them horses when they're colts. Stradivari looks early. Interestingly, Fellowship looks like it can close. Awesome Speed looks a bit like an early horse. And what am I looking at? I'm looking at these, just the general running style. Exaggerator obviously is a deep closer. Uncle Lino looks early. Biting Star looks early. Collected looks early. Lonnie, we don't know. It didn't have a very good Derby. It had not a good start. And it's an unknown. I have no numbers from the Japanese race, obviously, or the UAE race, and so forth. A Cherry Wine is a very deep closer as well. Could be one of those colts like last year where the colt closed into American Pharaoh. And Laoban is obviously a very early horse colt. So it makes sense that the race, as it is, if it's running on a fast track, in the Preakness at 1 3/16 miles at Pimlico, where historically it goes late, and that's what I showed you, a late horse that likes to lay close to the pace, and guess who that is? It's Nyquist. Okay, see, it's close to the pace. It has it can run a little on the late side. Now, Stradivari is second on the line, and this is an interesting colt. It won its maiden in December, blew out a field, then came in and blew out an allowance race. But that's the issue. It was an allowance race. It's got very good energy expenditure for this field. I would have to get a very long price on it, but I would consider it. Again, remember, we're looking at the pressured scenario. Horse that intrigues me a little bit is Fellowship. Now, it's third on the line. 7-1, the contention line is 45-1, meaning it should be a long shot. The morning line is 30-1 on the colt. And look at its recent energy percentages. It actually ran a 49.57 getting third in the Holy Bull at Gulfstream. It's in the Florida Derby where it chased down Nyquist, actually, right? It ran a 51.30 in a closing style. From a style point of view, this is very interesting. Now, it's also got one of the advanced form patterns. It's type 1 and type 2. I won't get into the details of that, but it's the only pattern in the race. Again, not very significant in a Triple Crown race because every horse is being, it's just going all out for these races. So that would be my lookout at the race from the late side. Okay? So if it's a fast track, and parenthetically, if it's a muddy track, I'd be looking at probably a Fellowship now again, I'm not just looking at the odds and say, well, 7-1, well, I want 14-1 because that's a double overlay. It's 100% of it. No. It makes sense. Look, Nyquist, come on. Looks good. It's got the right energy for it. Just blew out the Derby. It's, what is he, 8 for 8? 8 for 8. And this is a good horse. I'm gonna need a real solid, good price. If the track is, fast or muddy, just not sloppy, I'll take it. If you're going to look at the late scenario, you have to look at Exaggerator. You might look at Cherry Wine. Just take these closers. Again, now, does Nyquist belong in the mix? Yes, of course. Is there any reason to bet against him? Not really. The one thing I would say, and by the way, it's got a perfect running style for whether this comes up early or late. and it's got decent off-track breeding. I mean, I don't know much about breeding, but I'm told it's decent. Okay, so I may, again, on a fast track, other than sloppy track, I would look to see if all the speed collapses, if maybe Lauban and Awesome Speed and who else is there? I think the 9-horse Binding Star go out and try to beat up Nyquist because, the jockeys read the past performances as well. They try to tire him out, and then all the speed collapses, and we have Exaggerator, Fellowship, and Cherry Wine coming down. That would be the huge trifecta, especially if it's Cherry Wine, Fellowship, Cherry Wine. So, let's say it comes up sloppy. Remember when we looked at the track profile for sloppy, like when American Pharoah won last year in the slop? Well, guess what? Nyquist is still on top. A Biting Star is now in the mix. And, this is this is nothing, doesn't look like a graded horse. I mean, it's been winning some nice races at Parks. But guess what? Nyquist is still on top. So the takeaway from this is no matter how this race comes up, whether early or late or whatever happens, Nyquist is solid. I can't, been throwing as many rocks as I could in analyzing this race. I can't really get around Nyquist. Nyquist winds up in the exacta, it's not going to pay anything. So my strategy right now, without seeing the board, without seeing the weather, assuming a fast track or other than sloppy track, is Nyquist is probably going to win. I'd probably hook him up with Fellowship. Exaggerator only in a trifecta with Nyquist, because if it comes Nyquist Exaggerator, guess what? That exacta is going to pay $6.40. I'll probably throw Cherry Wine in the superfectas and such. Will I have Stradivari in there? I'll see. That's kind of price dependent. But Fellowship, to bet it to win, I probably need 20 to 1, somewhere in there. I'll probably get that. I'd be making that bet saying, you know what, I'm betting against the best horse, but I think I'm getting really good value enough to say, well, what if Nyquist gets caught up in it? What if it's caught up in an early speed battle? What if the pressure develops? And what if this horse comes off the pace? So sure, take it. Will I be very confident about it winning? I'm never confident about a horse winning. Yeah, I like a horse more than but that's not the important thing. Is it a decent value bet? At a high enough price, yes. I'm not taking this horse at 10 to 1, even though that's a bit of an overlay from 7 to 1, just because it's got this monster to deal with Nyquist to deal with. So that's my look at the Preakness. Once again, I urge you to look at the undercards, not only at Pimlico, but at the other tracks. Now, looking at Pimlico, there are a lot of races, and this happens on big days, that you get these very short horses. And I think that's because the racing secretary writes a few of these races on every undercard for the big days for certain owners and certain trainers, so they can, have a winner, or have, you get a horse like this double whammy in the first, 5 to 2, contention is 7 to 5. I mean, he looks good on paper. Morning line is 7 to 5. Those are hard horses to beat. One thing I would say, it finished its last race 6 by 8 lengths, or 8 3/4 lengths. Steve came through at a long enough price, 5 to 1 going to 10 to 1. 10 to 1, I'd look at this. I'd look at this horse. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just a matter of price and whether I want to be at the book at 7:30 in the morning to be looking at the board. Pimlico race 2 looks like a mess. Race 3, you got another one of those really strong horses on top. Uninclined to look at that. Another horse with a huge gap from 5 to 1 to 10 to 1. Now, again, I've got a lot of turf races to deal with. Guess what? If it rains hard enough, they take these races off the turf. It will be a mess. It will be a big disappointment because a lot of those horses are going to scratch out. They won't run in the slop on the dirt. The sprint handicap, It's usually a highly pressured race, and it's highly pressured this year as well. Strong horse, Always Sunshine on top. Not going to be a price. I don't think Sunny Inspired is going to be that much of a price either. I would look for one of the closers in this race, and it just doesn't look like a decent betting race to me. And again, the board may change. May change my look at it. Salutos Amigos, who's just a monster, should be closing, likes the distance and so forth, but not a bet for me. The 6th race, again, on the turf, don't know what's going to happen. Got some prices in the mix. This is one of those that I may bet when I see the board. Looking at advance, like in advance, I look at this the 7th race. It's Chief Iston, who's 2 for 2. Looks like maybe the real thing, but it's been off since April. So is that a flaw? Sure. Then I would look for prices on one of these others. Lady Shipman looks like, another one of these strong horses right on top. Being born and bred New Yorker, I got to love a horse called Miss Matzo Ball, because, all my classmates, when they come over to my house, they have pasta. When I go over to their house, it's matzo ball soup if it's the season and a cold day. And it was like, I always love going there, and they always love coming to my house because the grass is always greener, right? So, but all kidding aside, Miss Matzo Ball, 20-1 maybe. I don't think I'll get that. Pimlico 9, 2 strong horses on top, the 9-5 and the 3-1 favorite. You have to go way deep to look at formal summation. Don't like it's running its good number with a really tough race. So a race like this, again, I would look for scratches and the weather to make this a little more clear. But look at all the prices in the ARC. I mean, geez, above random. You're going to be picking from among probably 4 big prices, and it's like, well, not my kind of race. Now, the 11th race is interesting in that it's a highly pressured race. It's 1 1/16 on the dirt. And the 3-horse Kingslayer is on top. That's 7-1 in the odds, 5-1 in contention, 15-1 morning line. Don't know about that 15-1 morning line. Here's a colt that just won 2 races. Now, admittedly, these were both at Parks, so there's this inherent prejudice against shippers. And so they'll say, well, maybe he can't run. But what's interesting to me is if we look at the running style, we see that it won its last 2 races wire to wire. The second back was in the slop, so in the slop it could handle it. It had a nice win. And it showed a bit of a closing running style in its 3rd race back and its 4th race back, and in its first lifetime race. This would interest me. Now again, unlike with the 10-horse fellowship in the Preakness, where I'm betting it's a monster, this horse is at the top of my line. I'd be more inclined to take a 15-1 on this, or 14-1. It's positional. If the race comes up sloppy and it comes early, well, Kingslayer goes down second, and I get this Bombo gone local, which is 30-1, 1 for 1 on the slop. The number comes from an asterisk. Long story. Exclude that. Kingslayer is still on top. So yeah, I'd be looking at Kingslayer, but I've got to be getting a price on it. I'd be looking on the late side. Might play around with Voluntario. And some of these longer prices are Discreet Lover Came to the Party, Dazzling Gem. And that's really it as far as the undercard. Perhaps this Steve came through at a big enough price in the first. Kingslayer at a big enough price. And then Nyquist looking at Fellowship to upset without a lot of confidence. Fellowship to upset Nyquist, rather. Not a lot of confidence. Although I will say that in the Florida Derby, it's got a nice 3rd there. That's a decent race. But again, got to get your price. Okay. Now, there are other undercards, but as I said, it's Thursday. I don't have complete cards for all of these races. I look at the other racetracks that are running. I mean, I've downloaded right now. I've got 160 races that I can bet in Las Vegas on May 21st. I haven't even downloaded all the tracks. So if you're selective and you just kind of wait, nothing that says you must bet the Preakness just because it's the Preakness, yeah? The undercards can be great, but if you don't get your price, you don't get your price. If you don't know, if you feel any doubt, any confusion, you think, oh boy, I don't know if this is sloppy. I don't know if it's going to go late. I don't know what the weather's going to do. I don't know if it's lightning. It's going to spook a horse and make him scared and make him jump. If you feel any doubt, pass. No one's ever lost money by passing a race. And remember, I had a great day on Derby Day. It's even more than the tickets I showed you, and I had some other races which were discussed on the Wizards Forum and like that. But that doesn't mean that Preakness is going to be a good day. I never know. All I can control, not how the horses run, I can control making good value bets, betting horses I like that the public shouldn't, waiting for my price and letting the bet make me. That's all I can do. And sometimes, cash tickets, and sometimes you don't. Okay. So I hope you enjoy this. This is warts and all. This is how I look at the races. This is how I use the software. I hope, yes, it was great that I had a $38 horse and a $15 horse and talked about them on Derby Day. Yeah, sure, wonderful. But what's more important to me, even if those horses ran up the track, what's more important to me is you get the approach of value capping, how it's not just about the pace and everything else, about getting your numbers together, getting a good line together, and then seeing if you have a good investment. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That's my thinking on the Preakness. Again, a big congratulations to those of you who did so well on Derby Day. And I've got to say, you were much too profuse in your thanks. After all, you went out, you looked at it, you assessed the information, and you bet it. One person said he had the best betting day of his life, made several $1,000s. So I'm thrilled. But regardless of what the horses do, I mean, as I said, when you looked over my shoulder, I don't have control of what the horses do. All I can do is find good value investments. And what my purpose is in this is to show you the technique of value capping. Not the specific horses, I don't care. If these horses run up the track, they run up the track. And that's possible. Don't want you to think, see, Pizzolla hit those long shots. I better get on board in the Preakness and I'm going to bet. No. Learn the technique. Learn how it's about betting horses you like, the public shouldn't, letting the bet make you. Okay, so those of you who are on the Wizards Forum, monthly videos coming soon. I've been kind of tied up with this Triple Crown stuff. It's coming soon. I'm going to show you a couple of races that we all discussed on the forum before Derby Day, on Derby Day, which were spectacular. A couple of from that weekend, which were also spectacular. And you'll be getting a letter about the changes in the Wizards Forum to answer your questions. The Value Capper Black Magic 2.0 is around the corner, maybe a month or so, maybe 2 months. Trust me, it's going to be worth waiting for. Thank you for your patience. Most of all, thank you for your support of each other and your kind words. Until next time, really enjoy the Preakness, and don't forget, wait for your price, let the bet make you, and most of all, enjoy. I'll see you soon.